get started here. First, can everybody hear me? If you can't hear me, raise your hand, I guess. Some other people come in, we'll just let them come in. My name is John Remus. Thank you for coming today. This is not our fourth meeting, it's actually our third. We had to cancel the meeting in Pierre this morning due to the weather. So I'm glad that you all made the time to come out today. Before we begin too far, we have handouts. There's copies of the slides that you'll be seeing, an agenda. There's also a little comment card where you can put your name and your organization if you have that. We'd really like you to fill one of those out if you're going to ask a question. That way we get it for our notes. Basically, we get your name spelled right in the notes. You know, we're here, this is, like I said, the third of our 6 scheduled meetings. We're going to have 2 more tomorrow down in Nebraska City and Smithville, Missouri. We're here to talk about Missouri River water management. There are a lot of other issues that you may have questions about. If you have questions, we'll take those questions. We probably won't be able to answer those. We've also asked the Weather Service representatives to help us out here. This afternoon we have Kevin Lau from the National Weather Service's Missouri Basin River Forecast Center. He's a lead hydrologist there, and his office is the one that puts out the river forecast. Many of you have probably been looking at quite a bit over the last several weeks. You can ask questions later. We'll have a question and answer period after the presentations here. So I ask that you hold your questions till then. If you want to send in a comment or a question and you don't want to ask it here in the meeting, you can always fill out one of our question or our comment sheets, or you can mail us in a comment later on if you think of something that you thought you should have asked but you didn't remember it. I do that all the time. Or you can just go out on the our website and email us that way. I'm going to make some introductions here. My staff that I have here, Kevin Grody, who is chief of our reservoir regulation team, Mike Swenson, who is chief of our power production team, Ryan Larson, who is a member of the power production team, Eileen Williamson, who is our public affairs officer, and Ed Clary, who you saw outside. He is our admin support. Later on in the question and answer period, Ed will have a microphone that he'll hand around so you don't have to get up and come to the microphone. But we do want everybody to be able to hear the questions and hear our answers to those questions. And then we have Tom Curran here, who's the operations manager at the Gavis Point project. Are there any other federal agencies represented that would like to be recognized? How about any congressional representatives or their staff that would like to be?
Terry Self with Senator Ernst's office.
Anyone else?
Susan Stewart, Senator Grassley's office.
Tyler Bortson with Senator Mike Rounds from South Dakota.
Colby DeWitt with U.S. Congressman Steve Kings.
Any other congressional delegates or their representatives? How about any tribal government officials? State or local governments that would like to be recognized? If we're here to talk about something, we're also here to not talk about something. And there's a number of litigations going on in the basin you may be aware of. They're ongoing litigations, and we're not going to comment on those. It's just policy that we do not comment on those particular matters until they're finalized. If you do have questions about the litigation, get a hold of the Department of Justice, Public Affairs. They will be able to provide you whatever information is available on that. So you can read the slides. With that, I think I'll turn this over to Kevin Lau from the Weather Service.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I appreciate the invite to be here with you this afternoon. The intention of my presentation this afternoon is to give you a little bit of background of the National Weather Service and what role we play with river forecasting and also reservoir inflow forecasting, and go into a little bit of what happened during the event as far as our operations go. And so every spring for the past several years, the National Weather Service within the greater Mississippi River Valley does what's called spring outlooks. They do 2 of them. And in those spring outlooks, we look ahead. They're done usually in February and March. We look ahead 90 days, 3 months, to determine the flood risk across the basin. And so I developed that along with my staff at the Missouri Basin River Forecast Center. There are other, within the Mississippi River Basin, there are 4 other offices just like mine, and we get together and we write text products, we distribute graphical products, and then we also host an associated webinar. And the focused audience for that webinar I have on this 3rd paragraph, if you will. It is primarily federal partners, such as FEMA, USGS, Bureau of Reclamation, Corps of Engineers, but there are also local and state officials also invited to listen in to that webinar and also to ask questions too. So this year, the 2 outlooks fell on 21 February and 6 March. And those webinars were held the day after, on 22 February and on 7 March was when we held those 2 webinars. And beginning with the very first outlook that we issued in late February, our models did indicate an enhanced risk for major level flooding in the eastern portion of the basin. I highlighted just the major river basins that would be affected on this slide. I did not add those that would be minor or moderate, just the major. Major flooding was expected along the James and the Vermilion, the Little and Big Sioux rivers, and that was back on 21 February. Our models also indicated a risk for major flooding at 3 locations on the main stem below Gavins. Those were Brownville, St. Joseph, and Glasgow. Our second and final outlook was done on 06 March. The wording we used there was greatly enhanced risk for flooding over the eastern portion of the basin. And basically that included the eastern portion of South Dakota, and then eastern Nebraska, eastern Kansas, the part of Iowa that we handle, and the state of Missouri. That's what I'm calling the eastern portion of the basin. And again, at that point, on 6 March, we highlighted the James, Vermilion, Little and Big Sioux again as likely to experience major level flooding. But we also added one of the tributaries to the Elkhorn, one of the tributaries to the Platte, which is the Wood River. The Floyd River also was added, and the Tarkio in northwest Missouri. The model runs continue to indicate the risk for major on the Missouri Mainstem itself at a few extra points besides the original 3. This was the event that is now indelibly on our minds. This was the event beginning in the wee hours of the 13th. In some areas it actually began on March 12th, Tuesday, March 12th in the afternoon. But basically it was a 48-hour rain on snow event. And this graphic, it's a little busy, a little confusing, but what it is, hopefully you can see the outlines of the states and kind of orient yourself, and some of the cities are put on there. But the background field, the bluish field, is the snow water equivalent that was setting on the ground as of Monday, 11 March. Monday, 11 March. So that is in terms of inches of what we call snow water equivalent. So that's the liquid amount in the snowpack that was setting on the ground when the event moved in on March 12th. The lines, the yellow, the orange, and the red contours, that shows the precipitation that fell within those 48 plus or minus hours. So, for instance, this would be 3 inches of precipitation and the yellow would be 1 inch. And even though it looks like there's no rain here in the green, all that you see within the Missouri River Basin boundary, which is this black line, had rain in it. It's just that these areas had less than 1 inch, but the whole area had some sort of precipitation that fell. And this line here that looks like Halley's Comet or something, that is the transition point between rain and snow during the event. So this line, it was a complex event, as you probably know, but most of the 48 hours of precipitation that fell to the right, fell to the east or south of this purplish line, was all rain during that event. And up in here, that was all snow during that event. And so the take-home point, I guess what I'm trying to say, is that we had 3 inches of rain, for instance, 3 inches of rain that fell. The SWE background is a little hard to read, but this area in here had basically 1 to 2 inches of water equivalent already setting on the ground. This area, like the Nishnabotna, the Big and Little Sioux, and the Floyd River, they had anywhere from 2 to 3 or 2 to 4, in some pockets 4 to 8 inches of snow already setting on the ground when the rain came. And so this would be, so from this purple line to the east and south is all rain. And to add insult to injury, this ground was like concrete. We had frozen depths. For instance, Hastings, Nebraska had 25 inches of frozen ground, or the frost depth, I should say. Omaha had 15. Sioux City had 23. So the ground was deeply frozen. It acted like, as you know, it acted like a parking lot. So when the rain fell in the snow and it all started to melt off, it was not 100% runoff, but close to it. Just to set a little context, now this is not our agency's call, but we believe that we probably had something on the order of 30 to 40 new records as far as river stage goes. And the red dots indicate those locations where the rivers exceeded their all-time record levels as far as stage goes. But again, this is provisional, it's just from my office. The USGS would have to make the call on the true record. A little bit more context, and I apologize, the yellow may not show up too well. But these are the flows that were coming into the Missouri Mainstem below Yankton as a result of this event. And it also rained some on the 7th, too, on the Saturday preceding. So it all kind of gets muddled in there. But a lot of flow was coming in from your tributaries, and all about the same time. So here's the river name, like the Platte, coming in right above Neb. The number there is my number, 170. That's a conservative estimate. There were measurements that were made, not at the peak, but I believe that this number could be as much as 230. But I don't know that we'll ever know. And these are the dates of the crest of these tributaries. So March 14, March 14, March 17 for Louisville and the Platte, so forth and so on. So a lot of water is coming in between Yankton and St. Joe. So this slide sort of addresses what we do at our office, my office. So the Missouri Basin River Forecast Center, we're a field office of the National Weather Service. We issue daily forecasts. And when I say a daily forecast, I mean for the next 5 to 7 days, depending on the site. But basically, the next 5 days, we issue stage forecasts for 22 locations. Most of them are on the Missouri Mainstem below Yankton to the mouth, and a few of them are on the Kansas River in Kansas. We monitor another 400 locations every day, and we will issue a 5-day forecast, 5 days of stages, during times of high water. During the wintertime, we use 48 hours, 2 days, of expected precipitation. In the summertime, we use 24 hours of expected precipitation in our official river forecast. And that's because studies have been done to show that in the wintertime we can go a little bit farther than we do in the summertime, because summertime it's driven by thunderstorms. And these numbers, or this forecast horizon of expected rainfall, that helps to maximize lead time, giving people time to react, while minimizing false alarm rates. Because of the farther you go out in the future, you have problems with timing and amount and where it will fall. So we use 48 and 24. For this event that happened in March, we were using 48 hours of anticipated precipitation. So as I was saying, there was an event the previous weekend, Friday or Saturday of that previous weekend. And as the models were coming in and we were getting a little bit better idea of what might happen, the initial forecast for the Missouri River, for instance, was issued on Saturday morning. The initial forecast that showed flooding was issued on Saturday morning. The initial Botna was actually issued on Saturday evening. The Platte River was on Sunday. And we also began to issue inflow forecasts on behalf of the Corps. At Gavin's Point, inflow was first issued on Tuesday, and the Niobrara, it was first issued on Wednesday. When we issue forecasts for flooding, they are updated twice a day, if not more. When we began issuing inflow forecasts for Gavin's Point, we were doing them in the morning and evening. And then a week later, we began issuing inflow forecasts for Oahe, Big Bend, and Fort Randall. And we are still issuing inflow forecasts for the Corps. We were in daily communications with both districts, Kansas City District as well as the Omaha District, with relation to levee status. We attempt to take into account, because we have to, when levees are compromised, overtopped, breached, to estimate how much water is leaving the system and later coming back into the system. And to that end, Kansas City District offered up a hydraulic engineer to come in and help us to understand the relationship between the river and the water going out of the river behind the levees. And that's what I mean by this last statement, that there was an engineer from the Kansas City District who was with us for 4 days. And we also were in constant communication with the Missouri Basin Water Management Office, John Remus's office, with regard to reservoir releases, which we incorporate into our river forecast model from all 6 dams. So this is now moving into an outlook sort of slide. So basically what this is showing you in the graphics, this does not come from our office. This comes from the Climate Prediction Center out at headquarters. And green simply means that there is the likelihood is tending toward wet, is what green means for the precipitation maps. So the first one is April 15th to 21st, so in the near term. The second one is weeks 3 and 4, which right now means April 20 to May 3rd. This one is for the entire month of April, so there's overlap between those. And then this last one is the 3-month. And so the bottom line is that we need to expect that we're going to have an active hydrologic season ahead of us. It's not over. River outlooks. As far as the mountain, this is the one bright spot. Mountain snowpack continues to be average, and so we do not expect flooding from mountain snowmelt, at least not significant flooding. Might be some localized flooding out in the mountains, but I feel pretty good about our outlooks for the mountains. Plain snowpack. This was written before it began to snow again today, but plain snowpack was all but gone a couple of days ago. And the snow that we will get, or are getting now, should be gone within a few days. I expect full melt off within, well, my office, I just talked to them, they said 5 days. I would not be surprised if we lost it before then. To kind of give you an idea, April 15th is usually not only tax day, but it's the day that we kind of clue in on when mountain peak accumulation, that's the day that we usually achieve our maximum accumulation of snow water in the mountains. And so we're basically there, and again, we're at basically normal or average as far as mountain snowpack. And so when that snow begins to melt off, we usually see that the Missouri River Basin above Fort Peck usually crests. The runoff begins to peak in early June. Yellowstone again in the early June. The Milk River Basin has probably already done what it's going to do with the flooding that happened a few weeks ago. So we don't expect the high elevation in the Milk to do anything worse than it's already happened. The James River is still has major flooding on it right now, but once it works its way to the mouth, because it more or less acts as a reservoir, the crest at the mouth really will be imperceptible to the main stem. Little and Big Sioux, I have to caveat this one. When I say that the Little and Big Sioux Basin have already experienced their seasonal crest, I mean with respect to snowmelt. We've got flooding on it right now. In fact, they're rising right now due to the rain that's fallen and the rain that we expect to fall. So the Little and Big Sioux have crested or have seen their seasonal peak due to snowmelt, but maybe not due to rain. The Platte River system, and what I mean by that is above North Platte, the upper elevations of both the North and South Platte. That usually crests in mid-June. And then the last two bullets, which affect us here today, the plain snow or plain soils are wet. We remain vulnerable to flooding, and as you can see from these graphics, it looks like Mother Nature is going to give us the forcings for that, the input for that. And so the eastern portion of the basin does remain at an enhanced risk for flooding for the next 90 days. As far out as what we look. And that does include the Missouri River itself from Neb City down to the mouth. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin Brody. Thank you.